Hi, I'm Susan.
I'm Jim.
Welcome to Managing Life 101, where if you don't manage your life, it absolutely is going to grab hold and manage you.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were talking, and this is, if you can see, this is Sheena, one of our dogs. They come in periodically, and we have a little dog named Maggie. If you see her, she might want me to pick her up, but anywho. We were talking about yesterday, I think it was. Jim and I were just having a nice little conversation, and then all of a sudden he says, "None of this would be possible without you."
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was a bold statement.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, wow,
Mm-hmm.
what in particular wouldn't be possible without me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I thought maybe we were talking about one of our rental places that we had or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it was such an awesome comment to hear from your husband, or if your wife says that, or best friends, or I mean, it's how important it is to have someone that has your back. Do you want to explain to
Sure.
the people what you meant by that?
Sure. Whatever it is that you have in your life, it requires the cooperation of your partner. Mm-hmm. And quite often that cooperation reaches into an area that is kind of like, whoa, I mean, are we really going to do this?
True.
Are we really
That's
going
true.
to sink the money
Yeah.
into this thing right here and hope it pans out? Mm-hmm. I like, it was 08, 09, mm-hmm. right in that area. There had been a big crash. Not only the stock market, but real estate had crashed. And we had bought a building in 1999, which worked out for us. But I mean, initially it looked bad. It was bad.
It was, yes.
And it stunk. But it took literally a year to get that thing ready to rent. And once it rented, it did. Yeah. And then we built a new building next mm-hmm. to it. Mm-hmm. And that was a labor of faith in God, and the fact that the crash was already on big time.
Excuse
and
me. Sorry.
So everybody was clamoring for work.
Yeah.
And nobody had money. And thank God for friends. Yeah. One friend of Susan's in particular, who loaned us literally hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
We were able to finish the building enough mm-hmm. to where the bank would loan, do a small business loan. And then 5 checks were made out to 5 people who had loaned us a total of $640,000.
Yes.
And
which is pretty amazing that just on our name, knowing us, that was such a compliment. I mean, that is like really an affirmation of like, whoa, okay, I have cultivated people, mm-hmm. you have cultivated people, and together it just showed us that we have cultivated people over the years that had our back.
Yeah, well, they believed in us.
They did.
When everything around them was saying, are you crazy?
Yeah.
Are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
You're loaning them money and the banks aren't loaning to anybody,
right.
Period. And you're going to loan them money out of your savings mm-hmm. to help build a building that they hope gets rented. Mm-hmm. The economy was, anyway.
Wow.
It all worked out.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Lord,
yes.
that it did, because we prayed a lot.
Yes.
And every time I would go by the building and talk to whoever the contractors were there, I would say, okay, everybody, come here. Join hands. And we would all pray.
Yeah.
Dear Lord, give us the strength and the courage to finish this project and the money.
Yes.
And the money to do it. And he did. The Lord did.
Yes.
At maybe a year or so after that, mm-hmm. And then our first two tenants for that building,
yeah.
once the building was finished, it was vacant.
Right.
And
It was a 5-unit building.
and stayed that way. And there was a rainstorm in Southern California, which was, that doesn't happen. A big rainstorm.
Yeah.
And the roof collapsed on a building across the street.
Right.
And I got 2 new tenants
Yep.
that day.
That's right.
And we got a $36,000 a year raise
Yes.
that day.
Yep.
And so, in other words, we were prepared for tenants. We were prepared for them, we just didn't have them. And then once we got the building ready, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
They came, and then one more came, and then one more, and one more.
Right.
And there was the market was still in the tank at that point. And I knew that it was a prime time to buy real estate. There was no doubt in my mind that this is the perfect time to buy, because there were so many short sales
Yes.
and bank sales
Yes.
and literally auctions. And Susan's 401k had
Right.
diminished greatly.
Yep. Because the
And-
stock market was not doing great.
Yeah, everything was awful.
Yeah.
And so I said, can you cash out your 401k? And you said, yep, I'm 59 and a half.
Yep.
I can.
It was perfect.
It was
I didn't
perfect
have to
timing.
pay any penalties.
And so then we made the decision to buy, cash out the 401k. There was a 150,000 in it or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe a little bit. Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more, but not much more.
Yeah.
And so I got a hold of a real estate agent, found a duplex, found a bunch of places, but the duplex on Examino, I really liked. I knew it would be, once it was fixed up, it'd be easy to rent. And the price was right. The price was $375. And I knew if we put 100,000 down, 50,000 to fix it up, we would get an immediate positive return of 1,000 to 1,200 a month.
That's right.
So 100,000 investment and $1,200 a month return, that's a really good return on your money, considering that all the market
Yes.
was doing was tanking, more tank. And I'll never forget, we looked at the duplex, and the front unit the ceiling had collapsed, and it was laying on the floor. And
horrible.
the floor was all cupped from water because the roof was bad.
Yeah.
And the back unit was Section 8, which, if you're not familiar, Section 8 is pretty much state pays your rent. And it could be a good program if they ran it properly, but they don't. And Section 8, in our case, was a guy who was, an alcoholic, drug addict like me, except I was sober.
Yeah.
And I'd been sober for a lot of years.
Right.
He had yet to get sober, and so he was living there, and all he had to come up with every month was $200, and the state paid the rest. And he had a little girl.
Yeah.
He had a little girl. So I talked to him about getting sober. I would take him to meetings if he wanted to go. And I told him that if you continue on this path, your little girl will probably be preggers, before she's 16, and then be on the state dole. You don't want that for your kid. You want your kid to be prosperous and do well and make something of themselves. And on your current path, you're setting an awful example, And plus, I told him, I said, the neighbors tell me you have people coming and going all hours of the night. That cannot happen.
No.
And so I said, I've already been down to Section 8. I know who your case leader is. I know all about Section 8 now. And I'm telling you this, if I come up here and I hear music that I can hear on the sidewalk coming up to see you, or one neighbor says to me, Yeah, they're coming and going all night long. There was a family on each side. And I said, I'm not going to warn you. I'm simply going to give you your walking papers. Yeah. You have a 90-day period to get out. And so all you have to do is live like everybody else on the street. And at 10 o'clock, no music and nobody coming and going. And because these are people that work. Right. And you'll be fine. But you do anything else, you'll be out. I will give you eviction notice. And so literally a day, I don't even think 2 days passed. I got the notice from the neighbors because I told them to notify me. And I gave him his walking papers. That front unit with the ceiling collapsed, I called Craig the roofer. He fixed the roof. I called people that I knew right away. And we whipped the front unit into shape and rented it out like immediately. Right. Because it was really nicely done. And I put a washer and dryer in the back garage. I created 2 parking spaces back there with an electric gate for the tenant who would occupy the back unit. And the front unit got the garages. And I put coin-operated washer and dryer for both units. And
one of our most fun days is when you would go collect the change.
I love collecting the quarters. You know, in today's world, good. I would do credit cards.
Yeah.
But back then they didn't have that. Anyway, that unit paid us $1,200 a month for 9 years, right?
Yep. Yes.
And at the end of 9 years, we sold it for $750,000.
I remember we bought it for $350.
Yeah. And you know, the thing of it is, my point of all this is, if Susan hadn't been on the same page with me and said, okay, that would not have happened. Yeah. And we wouldn't have made that money. Her 401k would eventually come back up, but it wouldn't come up to $750,000.
No.
And it would not have paid us $1,200 a month for 9 years.
Right.
It wouldn't have. So I needed her cooperation. I needed her to have my back in this decision. And that's how it happened.
Yes.
And so having your partner's back is a big, big deal.
Yeah.
And if you have a good partner, you have to have a good partner. And you have to have somebody that you picked with intentionality as a good person, a solid person, a person that makes good decisions, a person that's grounded in their faith, grounded in their principles and values, how they treat people, how they treat you.
Yes, yes.
And then you can make some good decisions together and create a good life.
Yeah. Well, I think the same thing came up too. Now you fast forward to the end of 2018, and Jim comes home from having lunch with a couple of his friends that he knew from years and years back, and the old life. And one of them had said they had just gotten back from Hot Springs Village, and they loved it so much they actually put money down on a house that day, and that's what they were going to be doing, rent out until they retired, which was only within about a year. Jim comes home from this lunch all excited, and our grandfather clock's going.
Yeah. We actually own a grandfather's clock.
You know? We do. It's so cool. We love the chimes. But you come home from that lunch and you're all excited, and he looks at me and he says, oh, they were talking about this great place, and he says it's in Hot Springs Village, Arkansas. Now, we lived in Long Beach, California. That literally was a 10-minute beautiful walk right to the beach, right to the ocean. And I said, Arkansas? But you see, I had his back. And he said, I think we should go there and visit. I said, okay.
We should go check it out.
We should go check it out. With no intentionality of anything other than checking it out. We came home after 3 days and we had bought a house, the 4th house we saw.
Yeah.
And what we would do is we would come back and forth to Arkansas, and I think the 3rd, and we would come here for a month, go home for a couple months, and we would drive because we always have our dogs.
Yeah.
And then we eventually just said, let's just move here full time.
Yeah.
And we were here in November of 2019, full time. That was another where I was open. And I think that's the important part about being a good partner. You being a good husband, a good wife, a good business partner, a good best friend, a good whoever you might be doing something with. Are you teachable? You know, our pastor Paul did a great teaching about a month or so ago about, are you teachable? And throughout our marriage, we have both been teachable. Not that we have specifically set out to say, I'm going to teach you this now.
Right.
Because that doesn't really work. But one of us will do something, the other one takes note, and all of a sudden, and it just started building and building and building that way to where we built up so much trust. So yes, building that property, buying that duplex, moving to Hot Springs Village, Arkansas, literally selling everything we owned in California and moving here. And we moved here in 2019. This is another thing. What happens in 2020? Quote. COVID.
COVID-19 or 20, whatever it is.
March of 20.
Yeah.
And what had we done? We bought a business park, a business center.
Yeah.
When everything is kind of like shut down. And then later that year, in the summer of that year, what did we do? We bought another one that was totally on life support.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure people thought we were absolutely crazy. But I think that brings up another great message, which is, do not live from a point of lack. Live from what is possible. I want to wrap it up, and then we can continue this in another session.
Sure.
With one thing that I thought was really cool. You and I, ever since we've been married, have set goals at the beginning of a year. And we would each talk about our separate goals. Then we would talk collectively of what, as a couple, would we like to set as some goals for that year. And then we would write them down, because there's power in writing things down. It's like you publish it.
You have to do that.
And then we'd both sign it and date it. And we'd always leave it up on the bulletin board, kind of like in a little passway where we would always pass. So subconsciously you're always seeing this. One year we wrote a goal that said, we have a real estate empire. We owned one thing. One thing. That was it.
Yeah.
But you know what? We wrote that down. And these many years later, you know what? We do actually have some real estate.
We do.
Because we threw it out there, and we do not come from a place of lack, but we come from a place of faith. And also I really trust your vision. Because that's proven to me over and over that I can trust that vision. And each one of us has specific skills. Jim is great at taking a look at someplace, i.e. the duplex that the ceiling had fallen in, and I was like, get me out of here as soon as I can. And yet it was gorgeous. And that is just something so important. So after we talked about it and said, well, let's talk about that, I totally understood what that meant. And I thank you so much for saying that. Sure. I do. It was so cool.
Yeah.
Because also none of it could have happened without you. There were so many great life lessons that you have taught me along our journey. And that's what relationships are about. They are about lifting. You want to always go for people that are going to lift you up. Lift you up, build you up. And not in a phony, those are not even real words way, but to really help you reach and become the full potential. God made each one of you and each one of us to be unique, to be filled with vision and purpose. And you know what? When you hang with the right people and you marry the right person because you've become the right person, and you are strong in what your values are and what's important to you, every year gets better. Every single year gets better.
It does.
So I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too.
And I
Yeah.
love you.
I love you too.
And you know what? We appreciate you guys. And thank you so much for watching, and really, really hope you're getting something out of this, because it is so important to intentionally manage your life. Because if you don't, it will take over and start to manage you.
Amen.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.